Hey, what's going on everybody? Alex here with Freedom Mowers. I hope you all are doing well. If you're new to the channel, I appreciate you stopping by. What we do here is take old crusty equipment, try to turn it around to either fix up and sell or keep the cool stuff. I hurt my back this last week, so I'm trying to work on something here in the shop where I can sit down, and I have this Remington Outlaw, which I don't know much about. I got this for free with a Husqvarna riding mower that I picked up recently. You guys will see that in a later video. I really don't know much about these saws at all. I looked it up earlier. I guess they still sell them at Lowe's for like 200 bucks. To me, it looks like your standard like craftsman homeowner type saw. It is 46cc, has a 20-inch bar on it, chain brake, you know, the usual stuff. It looks pretty well neglected and was put up in rough shape. Obviously the chain's about to fall off from here. Just a ton of oil. It's got a bunch of mold and stuff on it. And it feels like it has really good compression. I'm gonna get you guys set up on the tripod. We'll start looking over everything on this, and we're gonna see if we can get this thing to run and cut today, get it cleaned up, and hopefully it'll be a half decent saw for somebody. Alright, so first things first, I got a pickle jar. And we're gonna see what we got in here for some fuel. That looks like some pretty dark premix. I don't know what they were running in here. Was that 20 to 1? Yeah, that looks pretty darn oily, which is alright. I'd rather have it mixed stronger than leaner and burn it up. I can't even tell if there's any debris in there though, honestly. So overall, I don't see anything inside the tank that looks like any debris, and our filter is still connected, so let me get this wiped up. We're gonna put some fresh 50 to 1 fuel in here, and we're gonna give this thing a few pulls and see what happens. Just get a little bit of some 50 to 1 in there, and then we're gonna check this air filter on here as well. So let's take a look at this air filter together. Yeah, these are like on those Chinese saws. I've got a clone saw here that's just like this with the air filter. They're like these really flimsy, very thin air boxes. It looks pretty clean, so these things just don't have a good seal. I don't know, the gaskets and everything just don't feel very good on them. Well, let's put this thing down on the ground, see if we can get it to prime. We'll go off from the instructions here on the top. That way they tell us exactly what we're supposed to do. Turn it to on. It's on. Push the primer bulb 10 times. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pull the choke out. Pull it 4 to 5 times, and then push the choke in, and then 3 to 5 times. And then on a warm, okay, that's for warm engine. So let me set y'all up. We'll give this a couple pulls. All right, so 2 pulls. All right. She's smoky. All right, let's try it again. This choke arm feels like it's not working. Well, it's firing up. Well, we're making good progress. At least it sounds decent. As I get starving for fuel. Well, what do you say get this back on the bench? We'll take this apart, check that carburetor, and try to get that cleaned up. Seems like the fuel lines are working okay, but we'll check the conditions of everything, and I think with a good carb clean it should run decent. Alright, well that's good. Get this air box back off. Definitely some debris in here. I've never had one of these apart, so we'll try to figure this out together. We've got two fuel lines, one on the top, one on the side. Looks like we're gonna have to take this top cover off to be able to get this. So Allen head screws, so we'll get these two removed, and then probably these two back screws. So we've got those two, and it looks like these two Phillips. And a spark plug boot. Try to keep all the hardware together in there. Put that chain brake forward. So the plug wire rests in that little groove there. I'll just put that back. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and get these fuel lines off, and then it looks like we have two more Allen screws to get off, and then we'll have to figure out how to get the throttle and choke lever off. Alright, so I've just got a flathead. I'm just gonna try to scoot these lines. So that's our upper. This line does feel really pliable still. This one's probably a bit more stiff. There we go. Alright, so now we're spraying everywhere. Probably, yep, we had pressure in the tank. So I just opened that up a little bit. Alright, so we should be good there. The choke lever just, I guess, sits in that pocket. You can turn that right out. And then it looks like we have a Z-bend on for the throttle. So we'll go ahead and take the other two screws out. All right. So we should be able to lift. There's like a little rubber grommet there. There we go. So this is your air filter tube. They don't make these things easy to get into, do they? Alright, so we got that dust cover off. Everything should be out of the way. And then I gotta figure out how to maneuver this Z-bend off from the throttle. It looks like just need to kind of turn, get it pulled out a little bit, and then just turn it straight up, I believe. And then we have another fuel line on the bottom. Guess the hardest part is getting this Z-bend off from here. There we go. The other fuel line, that just corroded and fell off, so we are gonna have to replace that line. That broke as soon as we pulled up. Alright, well we got that carb out, and like I said, that fuel line there is rotten, so we're probably gonna have to pull the primer bulb out, or see if I can get that line out, and we'll just kind of go from there. But I'm going to get everything cleaned up off the table, and we'll start looking into this carburetor. Got a couple of big helpers out here today, so we'll see what we can get into. Alright, well, we got that carb out. I did just take that little piece of rotten fuel line off the bottom here. We are going to go ahead and take the bottom plate off, which is going to expose our diaphragm. And we're going to see how that looks. Hopefully it's not dry and crispy. Probably is. And that's usually the cause of a lot of these two-stroke machines not to start, because that diaphragm is what actually pumps the fuel, and they get dry and hard and it can't pump anymore. It doesn't feel too bad though. Still pretty pliable, but it is starting to get a little bit stiff. So we'll go ahead and got another one of those I'll change out. Fairly clean in here. There's definitely a little bit of crud. You can see. Hard to focus, this camera has no zoom, but there's a little bit of crud in there. So we'll go ahead and take off the other side as well. Oh yeah, there's our culprit. You guys can see, let me grab a small screwdriver. All right, so here is our fuel screen. And you guys can see the gunk in there. It was almost totally blocked. I don't even know what that is. It almost looks like wood shavings in there. So this is where your fuel actually goes through this filter and then comes through this side and pumps. At this point, what I am gonna do is I'll go ahead and just get some carb spray. I'm gonna clean all this out, clean up all through the ports, both sides, and then I'll hit it with a little bit of compressed air. I'll get another diaphragm for it, and we'll put this thing back together and get some new fuel hose on that primer bulb as well. But I think after getting this cleaned up, we ought to have a pretty good runner. All right, well, I got that all cleaned up. I did, before I opened this up, I did blow the whole carburetor off with compressed air just so we didn't get more dirt and contamination in there. Also, your needle and seat is right here. It's this little rocker arm on this side, and when you push down on that tab a little bit, that actually opens up the fuel to come from the other side to this side. So what I'm gonna do is just have my finger on, I'll leave it closed for now. I'm gonna fill just a little bit in this side with the filter. I'm gonna go ahead and just rock that back and forth, see if our fluid is going through. Yep, and that pulled right on through. Nice and clear, and the fuel is flowing. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw in the new diaphragm, make sure everything else is cleaned up, and get this put back together, and then we're gonna jump to getting that fuel line swapped out. And I also have a new primer bulb as well. I did pull that other piece of fuel line that had come off from the carburetor earlier, broke off. That did just pull right off from the primer bulb, but I'd like to see if we can just pry this one out. Shouldn't have come off that easy. Got a new piece of fuel hose. I'm just gonna match it up around the right length of the old one and get this new primer bulb installed. So let me get this measured out and cut, and then we can go ahead and put in the new bulb and get both of those lines on, and then we should be able to go ahead and pop that carb on and go in reverse order what we did earlier, and should be able to crank this thing right up. All right, well, we got that new piece of line on and the new primer bulb. I did go ahead and push it a few times just to make sure everything was working as it should, but we are basically supposed to be pulling fuel up from this line. It's going to go through the carburetor, come back down out this line, goes into the purge bulb, and then back down into the tank. But you guys can see, you can watch probably the bubbles in there with the flow. And now it's going back down, and that fuel is pulling into the primer bulb, and when you push it in, that fuel is actually pushing back through the lower one back into the tank. So that's what actually draws the fuel up to be able to prime. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of the stuff blown off, make sure we've got everything nice and clean to be able to put the carburetor back on, and just reverse order of how we took this apart earlier. And then we should be able to try this out for a test fire. 42 degrees right now. Give it a few primes, choke. All right. Choke off. She fired up. Let me grab some adjustment tools and we'll see if we can get this thing if it needs any kind of adjustment. So I took a look. This one's going to take the Pac-Man adjuster. Gonna see if maybe we were running a little rich, so I'll go about 1/8 of a turn clockwise on this to try to lean. We'll see if that does anything. If we need to, we'll go the other way. I think we've got that pretty well dialed in, but we'll be able to tell once we make a few cuts and everything as well. I'll see if it'll start right back up now. All I did was kind of just go a little bit back and forth on the low speed, and once I felt like it was sitting about right, I did end up having to bring the idle down. I just went a little bit leaner, which is going to bring the idle up, and then brought the idle down with the actual throttle screw. So let's see if it'll fire right back up. Awesome. Running good. All right, so we'll go ahead and pop the cover off from here, and we're going to take a look to see if it is oiling. I did check last night. There is some bar oil in here, probably about 1/2 tank. So we'll just check to make sure that it's oiling out of the port on the actual saw, and then we'll check to make sure that the ports are clear on the bar, because otherwise, even if it's oiling, if you're clogged on your bar, it will not oil like it's supposed to. So I'll show you guys all that. Well, I thought I was hitting record. I already ran it once and the oiler's working, but I'm gonna show you guys again. We'll go ahead and crank it back up. See if I can do this one-handed. Awesome. Well, the oiler is working just fine. And so on the bars here, your oiler port will actually line up with this smaller hole. It's kind of hard to see with that glare. But you need to make sure that that hole is clear. Yeah, see, like this one on this side, you can't even see because it's packed. But this was actually the side that was up against the oiler, so that's fine. But we're going to get all this cleaned up. But otherwise, if these are clogged, you're not going to get oil, regardless if it's pumping or not, to your bar, because it goes through this and then comes up into the channel, into the groove here. And your track also needs to be clear as well, for your oil to be able to run around the bar. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this cleaned up with some degreaser, compressed air, and I will show you guys once I'm done getting all the parts cleaned up on it, and then we will get this thing reassembled and make some test cuts. I'll probably put an edge on that chain, then we should be good to go. So let me get this cleaned up and I'll check in once we've got this all done. It's amazing, there was actually a machine underneath all that. Turned out pretty well, cleaned up nice. It didn't get 100% everything, but we got it a heck of a lot cleaner than it was. So we should be in pretty good shape now to get this all reassembled. Like I said, I cleaned out those oiling ports on both sides, and also there is a small port up here at the tip for the sprocket, and I did oil that as well, cleaned out the track. Only thing left is I'm just gonna put it back together, and I'm gonna sharpen that chain a little bit. We're gonna take this out for some cuts. All right, well, I've got the chain sharp on here. Don't have it razor sharp, but I did go through and clean up the edges on those, and it looks pretty good. Overall, machine's looking pretty good. We know everything's functioning on it, and I recently had a pretty large tree branch fall, and I did cut this up a couple weeks ago, but I left all the big pieces so I could test some of the saws that I have coming up. So I'm gonna get y'all set up on the tripod, and we're gonna let this thing rip and see how it performs. Plenty of power. I was just going into the wood a little bit funky. You guys can see the chips it's putting out. Plenty of power. Make a few more cuts. I feel like it's tuned in pretty well. Awesome. Well, I would say it's a pretty good deal. We didn't have too much time invested in. Honestly, a lot was just in cleaning it up, trying to get all the old oil and everything out of there, and just making sure everything worked properly. Let's see, we did the new fuel line, cleaned the carburetor, put a new primer bulb in, did a little bit of tuning on it, just cleaned it up, sharpened the chain, and got a good runner. We'll see if we can just crank it right back up one-handed. And obviously it's cutting good, so I am not any professional at chainsaw cutting or anything like that, so I'm sure you guys can give me some pointers on cutting wood and tuning and stuff like that, but I feel like we did a pretty good job getting this dialed in, and I'd say we got a good saw for somebody. So if you guys like this kind of content, please think about hitting that subscribe button and leaving me a comment, hitting a thumbs up. I love hearing from you guys, and yeah, so I think we got this one dialed in. So on that note, let freedom ring, let those small engines sing. I'll see you all next time.